All right, welcome back in. It is Gamecocks game day, game number 4, as the Gamecocks get set for their first true road test of the season, heading to the other Columbia, Missouri, that is, taking on the Missouri Tigers in a kind of rivalry game for the Mayor's Cup, which South Carolina did win last year. He's Elijah Campbell. I'm Tyler Head. We are live once again out at O'Hara's in Lexington, as we do for each and every road game for the Gamecocks. And as you heard Coach Beamer talking there, in our intro, hoping to do a lot better than they did last week and get themselves back in the win column and get at least to even in conference play, taking on a very tricky Missouri Tigers team today.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredible test for this team, not just because of what Missouri does offensively and a lot of the firepower they have on that side of the football, but any true road game in the SEC is going to be tough, and it's tough for different reasons. And I feel like Columbia, Missouri is one of those games where it's just tough for different reasons, right? In terms of crowd hostility, it's probably not the same as going to the Swamp or going to Death Valley or going to Neyland Stadium, right? Or even Athens. It's not going to be that type of environment.
Sure.
But it's still going to be pretty hostile. It's an unfinished house because they're doing some construction in one of the near one of the end zones. And it's just a weird place to play. That's how I've heard it described most often by people who have actually had to play football at Como.
Yeah, I've noticed when you ask any Gamecock fan, how you feel about going on the road to Missouri, they kind of get that 1,000-yard stare in their eyes because it's been a long history of some tough games there since Missouri joined the SEC back in 2012. Carolina seeking their first victory there since 2017. Last time they went there back in 2023, couldn't even muster a touchdown. Had a bunch of field goals in that game. So not good memories in recent years out there in Como, South Carolina. But again, looking to right the ship. And as we've talked about many times, just when you seem the most down on a Shane Beamer coach team, that's when they tend to jump up and surprise you with a really great performance the next week. And, God, they're going to need it because this season, I don't want to say it hinges on this game, but when you look at what comes later on in the year with South Carolina's schedule, particularly some of those road games like you have at LSU, you have at Ole Miss, and you have at A&M, you really need to get yourself back into the win column this week to avoid that 0-2 start in the SEC.
Yeah, touching on the first thing that you mentioned there, how Shane Beamer coach teams have responded after some of their worst losses. I just kind of, earlier this week, I went back and looked at some of the losses that we can consider the worst in the Shane Beamer era. You go back to 2022, the Florida loss on the road. You got smacked at the Swamp, 38-6, not competitive. You then have to play Tennessee and Clemson to end the year, two teams that were fighting for a 4-team college football playoff spot, mind you. Old enough to remember when the playoff was only 4 teams, and you beat both of them. And then you follow it up in 2023. You look at maybe the worst loss you had was the Florida loss where you had them down 10 in the fourth quarter. You lose that game. It was pretty demoralizing. You have to go at Missouri, and then you got beat pretty bad. And then you got beat by double figures at Texas A&M before winning, 3 straight to get yourself the shot for bowl eligibility against Clemson. Wasn't able to do it last year. I would say the performance against Old Dominion was a spiritual loss. It wasn't an actual loss. It was a spiritual loss. But you bounced back by having your first true road game in the SEC, and you beat Kentucky silly. Later on that year, your worst loss of the year in terms of how you felt about how your team played, Ole Miss, 27-3. And the score probably wasn't as indicative of how further apart those teams were. You go the next week and play at Alabama, and you scare the daylights out of them, and then you rip off 6 straight wins to end the season. So there is some precedent here for good results following bad losses or bad performances. You're going to need that today because you look at the rest of the schedule. What you have here on Saturday today is looking mild compared to going at LSU, hosting Oklahoma, hosting Alabama, going to Ole Miss and Texas A&M. It's going to get a lot harder from here. So it's what really makes this game so important.
Sports are funny because there are some teams, some programs, some coaches that just tend to do better when they are doing the hunting instead of being the hunted. And for whatever reason, it seems like Coach Beamer coach teams are kind of in that way as of right now. You obviously hope that changes where then you become the hunted and people coming after you and you're able to beat them at a pretty high clip. But for now, again, they're still kind of in that hunting mentality, and hopefully that plays out later on today. A big reason why last week's game was as lopsided as it was, of course, the loss of Lenore Sellers on the 4th drive right before halftime. Got one play into that 4th drive, got hit by a blitzing linebacker who came in untouched and ended up being a targeting penalty, and he was out for the rest of that game. And again, concussions are such a tricky thing. No two are alike, so it's very hard to speculate on how long somebody's going to be out, what the effects are going to be. Thankfully, as this week's gone along, the injury report's gotten better. Again, we had a lot of unknowns for the first couple of days. It started being reported that he was at least at practice, which Coach Beamer talked about. Hey, if you don't practice on Tuesday and Wednesday, you're not going to play this upcoming weekend, no matter what player you are, whether you're a backup, defensive back or the starting quarterback. Thankfully, he was out there on Thursday night. What we got him on as questionable. He moved up to probable on Thursday night, and then last night completely off the injury report, good to go. So the North Stars will be taking the snaps today for South Carolina,
which is incredible news for Gamecock fans, right? I mean, and you look at just the 3 full drives that Lenora Sellers had as the starter against Vanderbilt. Methodical opening drive to score a touchdown, as good as the offense has looked all season long. Penalties and a bad snap and a bad sack cost you the second drive. Third drive, you march down the field. Lenora just makes a bad read, got duped, because that's what Vanderbilt does defensively. They're really good at disguising blitzes, disguising coverages. It was a mistake that you are more likely going to make against Vanderbilt, that other people have made against Vanderbilt this year. But you felt good about being able to at least move the ball. It's still a one-score game. At the time of the interception, it was 7-7.
Yep.
Right? So you're still very much so in the game. So much can happen from that point on. And then the injury happens, and you were there too, Tyler. It took the wind out of the sails of that stadium, and it was really hard to recover after that.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And again, God bless Luke Doty, went out there, did his best, and he was driving the team down the field. Immediately after Sellers went out, you had a missed field goal by Max Kelly right there before halftime. A couple other decent drives throughout the game, but they just couldn't finish. They were getting into Vanderbilt territory, turning the ball over, turning it over on downs, those kind of things, which is going to be a big key that we'll obviously talk about later when we talk about the offense a little bit more specifically. But again, you got your quarterback back, so I think everybody's the number one concern most people had going into this game was at least alleviated. Last night we found out he was going to be playing. And I will say, I kind of maybe expected them to play a little bit of gamesmanship with them this week.
I did.
Given what Eli Drinkwitz did last year with Brady Cook, where that guy was questionable all the way through the week, or he was doubtful, I think.
Doubtful,
going all the way up until game time. And I remember we were talking about, like, hey, man, you might see Drew Pine this weekend. And then, boom, Brady Cook goes out there, has a really solid game, and very nearly throws the winning touchdown pass with about 2 minutes to go in that one before Carolina went down the field and got the Rocket Sanders touchdown to win. So I kind of thought Shane Beamer might play the game back, but apparently not.
I'm still mad about that, Tyler Head, because I made myself watch 7 quarters of Drew Pine quarterback football to heavily dissect what that offense is going to look like in preparation with all the shows that we do during the week. So I was trying to get the picture of, okay, this is what it looks like with Brady Cook. How different is it going to look like with Drew Pine? So I've watched every snap of 7 quarters of Drew Pine quarterback football, and I can't get that time of my life back. I will never get that time of my life back. So I'm still a little chapped about that. I was like you, though. I figured we might see a lot of that whatever is on the availability report, I don't want to say is misleading, but it could have been just because of what happened last year. Coaches have long memories.
They do, but no gamesmanship by Coach being released on that front. Elsewhere on the injury report, as of last night, we did learn that DQ Smith and Mazio Bennett are probable. Don't really know the specifics on that. DQ, I don't think even popped up until last night on the injury report, if I remember correctly. Mazio Bennett's been on it for a couple days. Judge Collier continues to be out. That's been going back all the way to game number 1 against Virginia Tech. And Michael Smith also going to be out for this game as well, as he's been dinged up a little bit through these first couple of games as well.
Yeah, the Michael Smith one, you'd like to see more production out of him, but thankfully, you saw something from Jordan Dingle last Saturday against Vanderbilt. Not a ton of bright spots on the offense, but one of them you could say is Jordan Dingle showed that he could be a reliable pass catcher. So I think the tight end room can have Michael Smith's back. The loss of DQ Smith can really hurt because of his experience, because of when he's at his best, he can be really good. When he's making tackles, which really nobody in the back end of the defense was doing very well against Vanderbilt. But when he's making tackles, he's a very serviceable safety. He's a leader of that team. You would just love to have his presence as a leader on the field in this game.
As far as weather goes out there in the other Columbia, sitting at about 82 degrees right now. Should be around 81 at kickoff coming up tonight. That'll be at 6 p.m. local time out there. I do see a very slight chance of rain, and normally that wouldn't freak us out, but given what happened 2 weeks ago, you never know. So I really hope this is not a long delay type of situation like we had against SC State.
I'm scarred from the South Carolina State game. We were sitting here doing this show talking about the weather for that game, being
we felt great.
Very slight chance of rain. And that slight chance of rain turned into a violent downpour that made us have to delay the game by 2 whole hours.
Yeah, so hopefully that doesn't happen tonight. We'll get a weather check with the Jack Beltry coming up a little bit later on in the show, as well as we'll get his keys and final thoughts before we hand things over to the SEC report. Unfortunately, we do have to look back at last week as a rewind coming up next in the first loss of the season where Carolina fell 31-7 to Vanderbilt. Also hear from our guy Ryan Brewer as he gave his account of that game, as well as Terry Ford earlier on this week. That's coming up next. It is Gamecocks Game Day. We're live at O'Hara's out in Lexington, taking it up until network coverage at 4 here on The Game. Gamecocks Game Day. Tyler Head and Elijah Campbell hanging out with you at O'Hara's here in downtown Lexington, getting you set for the Gamecocks and the Tigers of Missouri coming up tonight at 7 o'clock, which you'll, of course, can listen to right here on the game. We are rewinding to last week, and you obviously heard not a lot of great highlights from that game where Carolina fell 31-7 to Vanderbilt for their first loss of the year, ending a 16-game winning streak over the Commodores, who admittedly don't look like same old Vanderbilt. That could be a good team this year. We don't know, but nevertheless, not a fun loss. And you mentioned a little bit earlier when Sellers went down with that injury right before halftime, kind of sucked the air not only out of the building, which is understandable from the fans' perspective. It just kind of seemed like the team wasn't playing the most inspired football after that.
Yeah, the bad vibes were spread by osmosis. Yeah, bad vibes were almost an airborne contagion in that game too. I mean, you could just feel it from watching them play too. Especially after you go to the half, you miss the field goal. That's tough, but you get the ball back to start the second half, right?
Sure.
This is your chance to be able to kind of rebound, regroup, march down the field, tie this thing up, game on. And you go 3 and out. You're only 3 and out in the game, mind you. Vanderbilt gets the ball back, and it only takes 4 plays for them to go 75 yards, capped off by a 44-yard touchdown run. And at that point, it's a multiple-score game. Lenoris has already ruled out. It got to the point where the bad energy was contagious throughout the entire stadium, bleeding onto the football field.
Yeah, absolutely there. And, again, the offense having trouble finishing drives where, again, they were getting into Vanderbilt territory at a relatively high clip, but either turning the ball over, turnovers on downs in the instance of the missed field goal right there before halftime. Just an ugly game all around. Defensively missing 10 tackles on the game, and it's going to be kind of the same story today when you're playing an offense that likes to get to the outside like Vanderbilt does with that option. If you can't tackle in space, it's going to be a very long night, and it certainly was for South Carolina last week.
It also didn't help, too, that you didn't grade very well when it comes to eye discipline.
Nope.
One thing Vanderbilt does maybe better than anybody else is deception before the snap. They send a lot of guys in motion. It's basically a triple option type offense to where you have to be aware of multiple safety valves, multiple options that Vanderbilt's going to have in terms of pitching it or stopping close to the line of scrimmage and throwing it. And a lot of times, Carolina's linebackers might have been a little bit out of position. And in the instances where they weren't, I still think of that example about halfway through the second quarter. Dylan Stewart plays that option perfectly, sets the edge. He's got Diego Pavia dead to rights. The only place Diego Pavia can go is up the field. He can't pitch it to the sideline. He can't really throw it. He has to go one way. You forced him into one way, and Dylan Stewart gets his arms around him, misses the tackle. Sean Murphy comes in there, misses the tackle. DQ Smith goes in there, misses the tackle, and 3rd and 6 turns into 1st and 10. And I feel like that play right there was kind of the microcosm of South Carolina's defense against Vanderbilt.
And an example, once again, we saw as well, mainly on defense this time with some undisciplined penalties. Had a couple roughing the passers there. You know, Brian Thomas Jr. was a little bit questionable. It's one of those situations and that actually came up in the Clemson game a little bit earlier. I'm like, I don't know what the edge guy is supposed to do there. He can't levitate in the air, but maybe a little more legitimate one with Dylan Stewart where he took a couple extra steps, shoved Diego Pavia. Later in the game, he gets drawn back and forth with Bryce Henderson, who had been trash-talking him all week. Got himself ejected from that game. Thankfully, he is going to be able to go today. He doesn't have to sit out the first half or anything. But, I get the frustration. We got to be smart in those situations, especially when you're the best player on that defense, because you're only further hurting your team by taking yourself off the field.
Dylan Stewart is simply too valuable. And for as long as he continues to play football, will be too valuable, no matter what team he is playing on, college, pro, whatever, will be way too valuable to get kicked out of a game. Your defense will get noticeably worse if he does not play. He's got kind of that Micah Parsons effect, right? Think what you want about Micah Parsons in terms of being the best defensive player in the league. You can argue that all day long. But one thing is incredibly noticeable is the Dallas Cowboy defense is a shell of itself without him because he is that good.
Yep.
Dylan Stewart is that good to where the defense will not look remotely close to the same if he does not get to play because a lot of it just runs through him.
Obviously not a fun outing last week in Williams-Brice Stadium, trying to put it behind us. But before we do, a few thoughts from our guy Ryan Brewer, who sat down with Terry Ford a little bit earlier on this week as he gave his thoughts and started looking ahead to Mizzou as well.
And now, let's get some brew. Time to hear from former Gamecock Ryan Brewer on Gamecocks Game Day. Live from O'Hara's in downtown Lexington. Sponsored by LexMed Ortho on your flagship home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Gamecocks game day, getting you ready for South Carolina, Missouri, 7 o'clock kickoff. We're at O'Hara's, 2 o'clock to 4. Then we have a viewing party at O'Hara's, so come out and watch the game. If you can't come out and watch the game at O'Hara's, you can watch it and chill with Elijah Campbell, Preston Thorne, and our buddy Nick Harvey from WIS TV. They will be doing a hang on our YouTube channel at The Game TV, so you can go with them, watch the game, comment back and forth, have some fun, and do shots every time South Carolina scores, which should be hopefully many shots. All right, let's get Ryan Brewer in here. Time for some brew on Gamecocks game day. All right, my man, we saw what happened Saturday against Vanderbilt, and we talked about this with you earlier in the week. This thing was like in two parts. Part one was before Sellers got hurt. Part two was after Sellers got hurt. You know where I'm going with this, right? This game was a competitive football game until the starting quarterback got knocked out, and then things kind of went sideways.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It was a one-score game. You had, obviously, we had the opportunity in the red zone with the interception. I thought it was just a great defensive schematic for Vanderbilt. Sellers, yes, he could have seen the skinny post and maybe thrown over the dropping nose guard, but we had our opportunities. We're moving the ball between the 30s. We just got to put the ball, in the end zone or make some field goals. Everybody's on the OC. I get it, but at the same time, we're moving the ball. We just got to find ways not to shoot ourselves in the foot with penalties, turnovers, and just lost, production plays after having a big play. So I think we're right on the verge of figuring this thing out. The problem is we're going into a Missouri stadium that we haven't fared well in the past at all.
Ryan Brewer getting you ready for South Carolina, Missouri on Gamecocks game day. Terry Ford hanging here. We'll get back to Elijah and Tyler at O'Hara's here in just a little bit. Ryan, you brought it up earlier in the week that defensively the biggest problem was doing your job or your assignment, but even more important, tackling dudes when it was time to tackle dudes.
Yeah, definitely, Terry. We haven't had that issue in the first two games, and all of a sudden we're missing 10-plus tackles in a game, and that's huge when you have some playmakers out there. Vanderbilt has playmakers now, which was something that they're going to break some tackles and do that. That's going to happen. But when you're not just putting your head across the front and doing fundamental stuff, or you're flying by the ball, that's when you start going, uh-oh, is this something that's going to keep it trending this way, or is it just an anomaly? And we're all hoping that it is. It's just a one-off, and these guys are going to, come there and put their head on the ball and head in someone's chest and try to bring them down. Now, Missouri has a running back that breaks the heck out of some tackles. His yards after contact are really good, but that's something too. He's also, and if you look at their schedule, they haven't really seen a test yet. I'm not sure if Kansas or was it Central Arkansas or Louisiana have the fighting Cajun, raging Cajuns or whatever. I'm not sure if their defense is something like ours. I would imagine it's not. So they haven't been tested. So it's time for us to show, first SEC game to show these guys that we can come in there and play some smash mouth football.
Ryan, we've seen this movie before with Shane Beamer's Gamecocks. They lose a game. They don't play well. Everybody all week's gloom and doom. Well, how are you going to go to Missouri and win? How are you going to play Alabama and Tuscaloosa? How are you going to go to Kentucky and play after this Old Dominion showing? Oh my gosh, you were terrible in the swamp in Gainesville. How are you going to play high-powered Tennessee when they're coming to town? Beamer's teams, after all these quote-unquote bad performances, always get it together, and either they come back the next week with a win or they come back the next week and play really well. So I'm going to tell you, man, I expect that to happen, that they're at the very least going to come. And Missouri might win, Ryan, but it's going to be a hell of a fight because it seems like Shane's teams always come back from these performances and take it up a couple notches the following week.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the trend is it's going to go that way. And these players can't think that, though, that, hey, this is what we normally do. And I think that's what's instilled by the coach. I think Coach Beamer, you see, wears it on his sleeve, man. It's these losses hurt him. You can just see through his face, his words, his actions that, this isn't something that they're proud of by any stretch of the imagination. So it's, how now I got to go to the team and make sure they're not the same thing. They're not okay with this. You can't be okay with a loss. You definitely can't be okay with a loss to Vanderbilt. I think that's what strikes the fans more than anything is it's a team that we have the last, I don't know, was it 19 years we beat them. So something crazy like that, that's tough. It makes it even harder. It makes it harder to swallow. And I think now you sit down and hopefully the team reacts the same way the coaches are ticked off about it. And they got to prove everybody out there, hey, that was a fluke and this crap won't happen again. But nothing matters. Words don't matter. Actions matter. So once that ball's kicked off, these guys got to find a different part of rage in their body and go out there and prove it.
All right, former Gamecock Ryan Brewer, how does South Carolina walk off the field in Como with a W?
I think they got to stop the big plays and got to make tackles. The running backs, he's special so far this year, but the defense has to step up and get the ball into hands. Hopefully, Sellers is healthy, and hopefully, he goes out there and plays his game. But it's going to be just doing the opposite of what you did against Vanderbilt. Don't turn the ball over. Don't have stupid penalties, and make sure you're tackling. And this is a team where we said, don't shoot yourself in the foot. We're going to have big plays. I think Harbor's getting better and better. We got to have some receiver step up. I really like what I saw in Dingle, how young he is and what he's doing out there. So I think with just some guys, it's time to shine. And when you get the ball in your hands and make some big plays, but just don't turn it over. I think there's a chance. It's a tough one for sure. Playing in this stadium, we have struggled, but I think it's something that we go in there and play our game. We're going to be fine. We're going to come out victorious.
Some brew on Gamecocks Game Day. Everybody, Ryan Brewer. By the way, Ryan Brewer's appearances here on Gamecocks Game Day are sponsored by Ryan Brewer. Please talk about Ryan Brewer Fence, my man.
Yes, I've had a fence company now, Terry, for 20 years with great teammates and that are surrounding me as their head coach. And they go out there every day throughout the whole state of South Carolina and put up anywhere from residential, commercial fence, temporary fence. If you can think about it to secure your yard or business, any kind of operations, we can do it. And it's just something, like I say, go to ryanbrewer.net, see our work, or contact us, and we can take care of you.
Ryan Brewer, former Gamecock, here on Gamecocks Game Day. Always appreciate you, my man. Thanks for your time, bud.
Yeah. All right, Terry. Go Gamecocks.
All right, coming back next, we will take a look at the enemy, Missouri Tigers, with Elijah and Tyler on Gamecocks Game Day from O'Hara's Main Street in Lexington, right here on 107.5 The Game.
Back in it is Gamecocks game day. Tyler Head and Elijah Campbell. We're live at O'Hara's out in Lexington, getting you set for the Gamecocks squaring off against the Tigers of Missouri coming up tonight at 7 o'clock on the road in the other Columbia as they fight for that, not my favorite trophy. The Mayor's Cup's kind of in my opinion. It's
it
ugly.
Looks like somebody just Googled, what does a trophy look like? All right, this will be our award for winning this new rivalry game.
In the summertime, I ranked every rivalry trophy in college football 1 to 82.
Yes.
Mayor's Cup came in 71. So very low on my list.
I would say that was even generous of you to make it 71.
There's some really ugly ones I wasn't aware of, so it was a tough list to make. But yeah, not very high on my list there. But regardless, the Gamecocks do have possession of said Mayor's Cup as of right now as they head onto the road for their first road test in the SEC. You just heard Eli Drinkwitz there talking as we were coming back, and unfortunately, there are some coaches that just have certain teams' numbers. And Eli Drinkwitz, even before Shane Beamer got here, has always had a way of getting over on South Carolina. Did it against Appalachian State, and up until last year, had not lost to the Gamecocks yet as the Missouri head coach.
He, going into last year, was the great villain of South Carolina football because he just didn't lose to them, right? Like, he just has their number. I think it's the best way of describing it. Even though he's very dorky, shout out to Ray, who called in the early game earlier this week and referred to him as the great dork of the Ozarks.
Oh, I like that.
Great nickname. But that guy can coach his tail off, man. That guy can scheme up an offense with the best of them. And that's one of the reasons why he's so easy to dislike, because he does carry this brashness about him, and he does have this kind of like evil genius feel to him when it comes to watching his offenses play football.
Yeah, Kirby Moore is the offensive coordinator in his third season there, obviously the younger brother of Kellen Moore, head coach of the New Orleans Saints and Boise State Bronco great, of course, but Eli Drinkwitz still has a very heavy effect on that offense, and specifically when we talk about those outside zone runs, which is their bread and butter, has been since he's been there. And unfortunately, the Gamecocks have struggled against that each and every year. Nate Noel went for $150 just last year, even though Missouri did lose that game. And, oh, buddy, they got a guy in Ahmad Hardy, another transfer running back they have hit out of the park with, coming in as the leading rusher in the SEC. 250 yards last week against Louisiana, but we've talked about it all week long. He can make you miss. 462 yards on the ground, 330 after contact, and 28 forced missed tackles on the season. He's a tough guy to bring to the ground, and the Gamecocks going to have the work cut out for them on defense today.
Just to add to the stupidity of some of the Ahmad Hardy numbers, if you just took his yards after contact this year, he'd be the 7th leading rusher in the nation.
Ridiculous.
Like, you cannot arm tackle this fella. I mean, you have to whip out whatever football tackling cliche you got, get 11 guys on the ball, hat on a hat, do whatever to be able to get this man down to the ground. Gang tackling, swarm to the football, all this type of stuff, because Ahmad Hardy is, if I'm just taking 2025, the best running back in college football, pound for pound. The guy is a gamer, and he was the best freshman running back in the country last year at Louisiana Monroe. It was an absolute steal in the portal, and with what Missouri likes to do with that stretch zone, outside zone play, it fit like a glove, truly.
Yeah, and again, that's something that's going to challenge South Carolina because they had trouble with their assignments and tackling in space last week, so that's something that's certainly going to be a concern going into tonight. As far as the quarterbacks go, going into the year, Bo Perbula was technically in a quarterback battle with Sam Horn. Going into the first game, where technically they were supposed to switch off drive after drive against Central Arkansas, and Sam Horn, unfortunately, on quite literally his first play of the season, ends up going down with the leg injury. That turned the keys over officially to Bo Perbula. But I will say, through the first couple weeks of the season, he's played extremely well, to the point where there's a lot of Penn State fans looking at Drew Allar's performance, where, of course, Bo Perbula came from as his backup and situational quarterback a year ago, saying, hey, did we make the right choice in who we kept this time around?
Yeah, a little buyer's remorse in Penn State, maybe. I mean, and Bo Perbula's numbers have been really good, and he shows an ability to layer the ball really well. He's got a strong arm. He's an incredible runner. If you remember last year at Penn State, he got what I call the 2006 Tim Tebow snaps.
Absolutely.
Where if it's third or fourth and short, they got a package for him to be able to run the ball and fight for a couple of extra yards. Like, Bo Perbula is got it like that athletically. The one thing I did notice when going back and watching the Kansas game specifically, it's the best defense they've played all year. So when watching that game, you realize a couple times he got away with it. He's not afraid to throw into tight windows.
Sure.
And sometimes that creates some turnover-worthy plays. This will be a big game for the Gamecock defense to try to be as opportunistic as possible, because if you can maybe bait him into some of those throws that he's convinced himself he can make, you will come away with some turnovers.
One thing I noticed, you mentioned his running acumen, which, again, is mainly what he did last year at Penn State, coming in situations like goal lines and short yards and all that kind of stuff. But most of those were designed runs, zone runs, gap runs, those kind of things. his numbers this year have mainly been off scrambles. So they haven't put a lot of designed runs in the books for him so far. And I almost kind of wonder, and again, they did play Kansas a couple weeks ago, but they played Louisiana and Central Arkansas, who they decimated pretty easily. I almost wonder if Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore have kind of held that a little bit close to the vest, and that could be something we see broken out today where there's a lot more designed runs for Bo Perbula, because that is something we know he's good at.
I think that's a possibility. And thinking back on some of Eli's offenses, they don't really feature a lot of quarterback runs, right? They like to keep their quarterback in the pocket and try to dissect defenses and pick you apart that way. But when you have somebody like Bo Perbula, it's kind of hard not to use that skill set. It's almost like you're wasting certain abilities if you don't do design runs. There's probably a reason they didn't put a lot of that on film. Who knows? Maybe they put him in some of those outside runs, outside zone runs. I think we will see more of that just because you have that ability in him. It doesn't seem like Eli Drinkwitz to not use a certain skill set of a quarterback, even though Bo Perbula's gotten the job done through the air so far for 3 games.
When he is in the pocket, though, if you can get to him, you can usually get him to the ground. His pressure to sack ratio is about 26%.
That's
so
high.
If you can get in his face, you can affect him and bring him to the ground, which is going to be a big key today. When he does get the ball out, though, he's got a couple of very viable weapons. Of course, last year, you had the combination of Luther Burden III and Theo Weiss. This year, you've got Kevin Coleman Jr. transferring over from Mississippi State, where he was just shy of 1,000 yards season ago. He's the leading receptions leader in the SEC. He's not getting a lot of downfield targets, but boy, like Ahmad Hardy, he can make you miss and get a lot of yards after the catch.
Yeah, I think he's averaging 7 yards after each catch, right? And his average depth of target's a smidge over 4 yards. So a lot of times it's a lot of bubble screens. It's a lot of underneath routes, right? Because Kevin Coleman is a really good athlete, a very well-traveled player. This is school number 4 in 4 years for Kevin Coleman.
Started off with Dion at Jackson State.
That's right, and worked his way through, all the way up the ranks to Louisville, and then from Louisville to Mississippi State to Missouri. But each one of those stops, he proved that he is a reliable pass catcher who gets you yards after the catch. Again, tackling. Kevin Coleman's going to get his in terms of catches. Make sure you're there at the catch and make sure you get him down so maybe a 3-yard reception doesn't turn into a 13-yard reception, because that type of stuff happened a ton in that Kansas game.
When you look on the defensive side of things, Missouri does have a very good pass rush. Couple of Georgia transfers coming over, and Damon Wilson, Darius Smith, the guys that are really good at getting to the quarterback. Damon Wilson's the SEC sack leader right now with 3 so far, and his pressure to pass rush ratio very good at 9 pressures on just 42 pass rushes so far this year. So he's somebody you're definitely going to have to contain coming off the edge for the South Carolina offensive line.
To give you an idea of how good that is, at the college level, if you have what is called a pass rush win rate of 15, you're pretty good. If you're at 20%, you are really good. Like, you are elite. His pass rush win rate after 3 games on 42 true pass rush snaps, 31%. Now, they're more likely will go down as the season goes along, but you don't get to 31% on 3 games by accident, right? Damon Wilson is the most underrated player on this Missouri team, and this is a big, big test for your tackles in this game. They will have to have not just a good game in pass protection, they're going to have to be great today against him.
Third downs are obviously key on both sides of the football in every single game, and my goodness, Missouri is amazing at third down conversion, 62% on the year. Their average yards to go on third down is 5.2. But here's the stat for you. When they've been in 3rd and 9+ so far this year, they are 0-9. If you can keep them in 3rd and long, you have a chance. But again, with the run game like they have, with that good short pass game like they have, you get them in 3rd and 5 or less, and they're going to make you pay all day long. This team is impossible to get off the field. They're averaging 38 minutes per time of possession so far this year, but they don't play fast. They're 93rd in tempo. They snap the ball at about every 28 seconds. They just go on long, sustained drives. And much like last week against Vanderbilt, when you give the ball to Missouri, you have no clue how long until you get it back.
No. And that's a byproduct of running the ball better than anybody else in college football right now. Because we talk about Ahmad Hardy a lot. Jamal Roberts is the guy who's been there for a few years. He understands the system, right? He's a guy that can also move the ball. They also had another running back that ran for over 100 in the Louisiana Monroe game, right? It's a team that ran for almost 500 yards on the ground last week. They will control and dictate the terms and conditions of this football game if you let them. It is vital that on 1st and 2nd down, you take care of your business, your sound tackling, force them into 3rd and long, because that's when Bo Perbula might have to force a pass, right? Where he can still very much so make a mistake. Remember, this is Bo Perbula's first career SEC start. You can maybe get him to try to play hero ball and force him into a mistake. Got away with it a few times at Kansas because Kansas defensively isn't as up to snuff as some of your SEC defenses. force him to try to play some hero ball, get him to 3rd and 9s, because you're more than likely able to see him reach for throws and try to play hero ball on 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, as you would on 3rd and short, because they can just rely on that running game.
Last point, special teams, and this is something to keep an eye on. True freshman kicker Robert Meyer, not the best start of the season so far. They don't really trust him in long range. He's made 3 field goals, all from 25 yards or shorter. He's 0 for 1 past 25 and did have an extra point blocked against Kansas a couple weeks ago as well. So special teams, if this is a tight game, could be a big factor in this one. And they don't have, it seems, the utmost confidence in Robert Meyer right now after Blake Craig went out earlier on this year.
Yeah, Missouri's on a backup kicker. Blake Craig was incredibly reliable. I mean, you get past, the opponent's 45, you're in Blake Craig field goal range. Blake Craig will not be available today. And I think there's going to be a hesitancy. I would not be surprised to see Missouri go for it on 4th down until they get to the South Carolina 25.
Yep.
Especially if it's 4th and less than like 5 or 6. Eli's very aggressive as a coach and as a play caller. Do not be shocked at all if they go for at least 3 4th downs today.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised at all. We'll take a look at South Carolina's offense, defense, and special teams as we come back and get you closer to kickoff between South Carolina and Missouri coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. Which you can listen to right here on the game. This is Gamecocks Game Day. Tyler Head, Elijah Campbell, live at O'Hara's out in Lexington on the game. Welcome back in. It is Gamecocks game day. Tyler Head, Elijah Campbell hanging out at O'Hara's here in Lexington, getting you set for the Gamecocks and the Tigers of Missouri coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. Real quick, couple of options to watch the game. You can actually come here to O'Hara's and hang out with me for the watch along at 7 o'clock, or first time ever, the early game is going to be hosting a watch along party on the 107.5 Game YouTube channel. We have a brand new podcasting studio that our engineer Randy's been working really hard on, and we're going to really kind of break this thing in coming up tonight. You, Preston, Jen, I think Nick from WIS has come by. There's going to be whiteboards. Preston's going to break out his football hands. He's going to be pacing back and forth. This is a tight game. It's going to be a good time.
It's gonna be a really good time. We've got a lot. I think Randy might have worked a miracle and got us a telestrator.
Oh,
so
man.
we could be able to mark stuff up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We've always wanted to do something where it's kind of like, like what Barstool and other companies do, where it's you watching along with them. We figured, for a road game when we're not all going to be there, this is a perfect time to do it. So hang out with us. Ask questions in the comment box. We'll answer them during the program, and we'll get to go along the roller coaster of emotions known as Gamecock football together as a show.
Well, speaking of roller coaster of emotions, you heard Coach Beamer talking about it earlier on in this week, where I don't want to call it a rant. He had a little pushback for the conversations that's been going on around the offense, which, let's face it, it's not been great so far this year. And I know people didn't want to hear this on Monday, but as we've unpacked it more during the week, they looked like they could string drives together better last week than maybe we had seen so far through the first couple of games of the season. Unfortunately, again, they had trouble finishing out drives. And again, if Lenore Sellers plays the entire game last week, who knows what happens? Because outside of the interception and the drive where they just shot themselves in the foot with penalties and stuff like that, they were able to move the ball a decent amount. So again, if you've been holding anything close to the vest, Mike Shula, now's the time to break it out, because it's going to take more than 17 points to beat this Missouri team tonight.
Yeah, here's the damning stat from the Vanderbilt game for me. You crossed the 50-yard line on offense 7 times. Mm-hmm. You got to the Vanderbilt 35-yard line, which in college football should conceivably be field goal range.
Yep.
Right? That should be field goal range. You got to the Vanderbilt 35 5 different times. You only scored 7 points. I see what Shane says when he says we did some good things on offense, because you did move the ball. It wasn't like South Carolina State where you got 3 3-and-outs to start the game and you couldn't get anything going offensively until about midway through the second quarter. I get it. I understand that point completely. But this is SEC football. Getting to the other team's 35-yard line 5 times is not good enough to win football games. Just crossing the 57 times is not good enough to win football games. You got to be better than a point per trip across the 50 to beat the teams that are going to be on your schedule. And Vanderbilt taught you a lesson that no matter how much you move the ball, and you can still, on a per-play basis, be better on average. Again, South Carolina won the yards per play battle against Vanderbilt, meaning they moved the ball technically better than Vanderbilt did. But Vanderbilt was way more opportunistic. They were way better at taking care of the ball. They didn't turn the ball over 4 times. Those are the margins you're working with here. And if you're not playing within those margins, you will waste a lot of trips in your opponent's red zone.
One of the small positives of last week is we did see Rasul Faison kind of be established as the main running back. I know Oscar Attaway was maybe a little bit dinged up there, but Rasul Faison pretty much got all the carries for running backs last week, went 15 carries, 74 yards, and did have that 1 touchdown they scored on their opening drive, obviously. And again, we had the eligibility thing in the offseason, wasn't ruled eligible until a couple days for the Virginia Tech game, but it does seem like he's kind of taking over that position at running back, and he's had some good runs so far this year. And again, you're going to need to run the ball as well as throw it effectively, so hopefully that's something we see on display tonight with Rasul Faison maybe hitting his first 100-yard game of the season.
I think you might need to be close to it, because Missouri is going to be able to run the ball.
Oh, sure.
Even if you shut out what Missouri normally does in the running game, that's still going to be more than a normal team that you shut out in the running game, right? Rasul Faison is going to be your kind of counterpunch to maintaining drives, milking some of the clock, shrinking the game if you need to. And I think the one thing that was a positive is that he did prove to you he can do that. He cuts so well. When I watch him run, Oscar Attaway run, I watch Matthew Fuller, Warren Howell run, the separator for Rasul Faison is his ability to make guys miss with how he cuts, right? He plants a foot in the ground. He's going in the opposite direction at a lightning pace, right? And I think that's what makes him the most valuable runner, not named Lenore Sellers, on this team, because even if he's not breaking a ton of tackles, he is so elusive, and he's so, like what they would call in basketball, twitchy, right? He's got a lot of twitchiness to him that at least helps make guys miss. without having to break tackles.
Yeah, and again, we go back to that long run he had against Virginia Tech where he sidestepped a guy in the backfield and went for, 33 yards on that long play there early on in the season. So hopefully seeing some good things out of him. We go over to the defensive side of the football now. Again, we talked about it a little bit earlier on. You missed 10 tackles against Vanderbilt, and if you tell me tonight they're going to miss that many tackles, at least I can go ahead and tell you what the outcome is. You got to play better. Clayton White obviously talked about, and I'm sure that wasn't a fun film watching session for them on Sunday when they got back in the building after watching that game, because there's a lot of sloppy football being played. And again, you got a team that's going to force you to tackle in space once again in Missouri coming up today, and you can't have those same kind of issues.
No. Oh, absolutely not. Not in a game like this, because as good as some of Vanderbilt's playmakers are on the perimeter, as good as guys like Cedric Alexander are in the run game, as Eli Stowers is in the open field, as good as Junior Sherrill is down the field, those guys aren't with the exception of maybe Stowers.
Yep.
Not the athletic ability of a Kevin Coleman, a Marquez Johnson, or the breaking tackle ability of Ahmad Hardy or Missouri tight end Brett Norfleet. Like, Norfleet's not as fast as Eli Stowers is, but you know what Norfleet does? He likes to hurdle. He likes to press the triangle button when he gets the ball. He has never met a hurdle opportunity that he didn't like.
Yep.
You got to make sure to not just wrap up, but tackle high. Be able to get him to the ground, because if you go low on him, he will jump over you. And the guy's been playing college football for a decade, it feels like.
Yep.
And I feel like every time I've seen a Missouri game and seen him get the ball, he's trying to hurdle somebody. So Missouri presents a lot of challenges where if you're not able to wrap up in this game and your tackling ability mirrors what it was on Saturday, it's going to be a long night. Put a ton of pressure on your struggling offense.
I see some opportunities here when it comes to special teams in the return game. Missouri has the second worst average in the SEC in terms of kickoff touchbacks. So you're going to have some opportunities for Nick Harbor to take it out, who nearly broke one last week. We forgot about that in a lot of ways, but everything went wrong last week. But Nick Harbor did almost break one for a touchdown, against Vanderbilt last week. They also have the worst opponent punt return yard average in the SEC as well, with 21. As much as we'd love Bakari Swain to get a fourth punt return touchdown, if he can at least help you flip field position, that's going to be a key tonight as well.
That's right. Yeah, Bakari Swain has elevated his own standard for what good looks like for him, because when you return 3 punt return touchdowns in the first 2 games of the year, 3 back-to-back in terms of returning them, the standard elevates a little bit for him, right? But it doesn't have to just be Bakari Swain get ball, Bakari Swain score touchdown.
Sure.
You nailed it. If he can get you on the plus side of the 50, and instead of having to put together a 10 to 15 play, 80 to 90 yard drive to score, if you only have to score from 45 yards out and you can still move the ball a little bit and you take advantage of those red zone trips, you're not only in this game, you can win the game. That's how important Bakari Swain's punt returning can be in this game. And I just wonder if they're going to kick to him at all.
Yeah, we'll have to see. On the other side of things for the special teams, we don't exactly know who's going to be kicking tonight. I thought it was interesting last week when Mason Love trotted out for the long field goal, which he would miss. And we kind of thought, okay, does that mean he's the long-range kicker? But when Joe DiCamillis was asked about it earlier on this week, he said, no, we kind of leave that decision up until game time, depending on who's making kicks. So I guess we don't still have a decided on kicker just yet, as William Joyce had done the kicking for the first couple games, had missed a couple, obviously. And then Mason Love misses one attempt last week. And again, much like on the other side with Missouri, if you can't have a reliable kicker, you're going to have to start going for 4th downs, even into Missouri territory, which could, again, not a great track record for South Carolina so far in the season. So with those kind of things, you'd love to have the kicking game a little bit more established, which they don't have right now, unfortunately.
I have a feeling because of that inconsistency at kicker and because of the uncertainty that kind of exists there, your 3rd down play calling strategy is going to be a little different. If it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, you might be running a play where a pass is a little short of the sticks to maybe set up a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2 to give yourself a chance to be able to convert it. In a game like this too, where offensively you're trying to find juice, I don't mind going for it on 4th down a lot in this game, just in general, because you need to be able to find something, especially if your defense early on is having a hard time stopping their run game. Getting aggressive might be the move, and once you get past the Missouri 50, starting to go for it on 4th down, unless you have an absolute certainty that either Mason Love or William Joyce, whoever wins the vibes battle before the game, can make field goals. Setting yourself up for 4th and shorts could end up being a good strategy.
Well, and once again, the numbers don't tell the story. The numbers tell the story of how last week's game went. South Carolina, 4 of 12 on 3rd downs, average down and distance 9.3. Once again, they routinely find themselves in 3rd and long scenarios, and that's something, again, you can't afford to do today, especially when you don't have the same certainties on special teams like you'd like to have.
Yeah, having a kicker that is nails from 50+ is a luxury in college football. But right now, I mean, if the scenario plays out like you just laid it out, where your average 3rd down's 3rd and 9, again, maybe the best idea is to get yourself to a 4th and 1, and then get yourself to have what we call the meat package, all the big fellas in there, and try to be able to move them. And that's also where the offensive line comes into play too. You're going to have to get push in this game to be able to get those 4th and shorts because of the uncertainty you might have with your kicking situation.
We'll see what our buddy Preston Thorne has to say about this matchup on the other side. Terry Ford sat down with him earlier on in the week. The lowdown with Preston Thorne. Up next is Gamecocks Game Day, live from O'Hara's. Rolls on your Saturday here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is Gamecocks Game Day. Tyler Head and Elijah Campbell live at O'Hara's out here in Lexington, getting closer to network coverage for South Carolina and Missouri tonight, but it's time to look at the SEC and top 25 scoreboard here as we get you set for a second half of the day of college football action. A couple interesting games going on right now. Number 17, Texas Tech, taking on number 16, Utah. There have been 5 total turnovers in this game so far. Texas Tech holding a 10-point lead with 4.5 minutes to go right now, though Utah does have the football as of right now.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, no, Texas Tech has the ball.
If you had alien invaders that came to Earth and they wanted to know what is American football, you're not showing them this game. Because if you did show them this game,
yep,
they would terminate you pretty quickly. It has been pretty offensive to the game of football. But Texas Tech, to their credit, had their starting quarterback knocked out in the second quarter, and all the backup has done is come in a true freshman
did a good job,
throw for a $124 and a touchdown, and has won them this game. It's been really impressive what Texas Tech's been able to do, despite a lot of their own miscues, and Utah's not been able to handle theirs, and that's really been the big difference in this game.
Of course, we're all intrigued by what's happening in the upstate between Syracuse and Clemson. Syracuse with a 24-14 halftime lead as of right now, though they are currently in a weather delay, have been for roughly about an hour or so, so no time frame on when that game's going to get restarted. We know very well how long weather delays can end up lasting, but Fran Brown had an idea to come in here and take it to Clemson, which they did right away. They drive down the field, get the opening drive touchdown, then immediately execute an onside kick, and they are up 10-0 before Clemson ever touches the ball on offense.
Wild. And after those two, drives, when being interviewed at the end of, I believe, the first quarter, Chris Budden asked him about that decision. He goes, we just think that quarterback's too good to get the ball a lot, so we want to take it out of his hands as much as possible. And that was obviously a momentum turner, and that made a big difference. You go automatically up 2 scores before your opponent even takes 1 snap on offense. It just put a lot of pressure on Clemson's offense to have to score and score quickly, and they just haven't been able to do it. It's 24-7 right before the break, and Clemson did what they did against Georgia Tech. Got one late to kind of cut into it a little bit, make the deficit somewhat manageable. But right now, I mean, maybe if you're Clemson, the weather delay gives you more time to regroup. But Syracuse going into the half feeling pretty good about themselves.
Well, and they took the crowd out of it pretty quickly. They were talking on the broadcast. Bob Wischusen and Lewis Riddick doing the call there, saying, "I've never heard Death Valley this quiet before." So they took the crowd out of it pretty quickly. And again, even when Clemson does punch back, they immediately go down the field and handle it themselves. So Clemson will get the ball to start the second half here. And again, we've seen them play not so great for one half and pretty good in the second half in all 3 of their games so far this year. So we'll see how that ends up faring for Clemson today, as they can try and avoid a 1-3 start of the season. You think Dabo was riled up the other day when discussing the 1-2 start after the loss to Georgia Tech? We'll see if they can come back against Syracuse in the second half.
If they don't complete a comeback, I think the only way you could describe the upcoming press conference they'll get as generational. Generational Dabo performance.
By the way, a Fran Brown and Dabo press conference. If Clemson loses this game, you and Preston will have a lot of fun with that come Monday, I'm sure.
We might just air both in its entirety. It'll be a quote machine.
Not a ranked matchup, but one that we knew was going to be exciting. Arkansas and Memphis getting down to the nitty-gritty in the fourth quarter right now. Memphis just took a 32-31 lead a few moments ago. Arkansas is driving at the moment as they are down to about the Memphis 16-yard line, and the clock is running with about a minute and a half to go, so they're at least going to have an opportunity to kick field goal and take the lead. Memphis does have all 3 timeouts to try and stop the clock to maybe get the ball back one more time. So this one, it's been a fun one for sure.
It wasn't supposed to be, because Arkansas got up 28-10.
Yep.
And then they could not stop Memphis's running game. And as good as Taylon Green has played in this game, he has made 2 crucial turnovers that have resulted in Memphis points. Memphis is, I've been saying it all week when talking about this game, don't play around with Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. There have been some really good SEC teams gone in there over the years and have lost. You cannot lose this game. You cannot play around, because you play around, you are going to find out. And Arkansas is maybe a minute and a half and some change from finding out maybe.
By the way, Texas Tech just took the 27-10 lead over Utah. That should be enough to seal that game for the Red Raiders, as Joe McGuire's crew looking to get off to a 4-0 start there. Other ranked teams in action right now, Tennessee obliterating UAB 56-10 in the waning minutes of the third quarter there. trying to, I guess, take out the frustrations of a heartbreaker last week against Georgia.
Yeah, I don't think the game's going to rely on Max Gilbert's right leg.
I don't think so.
I think
He probably wasn't a very popular person on campus this week, by the way.
I would have taken all my classes online.
I would have
if there's
too.
an option just do my assignments online, I would opt to do that. And I think anybody with a soul on that campus who is one of his teachers should agree to let him do it.
Only other ranked team in action right now, Oregon, getting started with Oregon State, the Civil War, or at least what we used to call the Civil War. Ducks up 7-0 right now, about halfway through the first quarter. Some interesting matchups getting rolling here in just a couple minutes. Auburn and Oklahoma. Auburn number 22, Oklahoma number 11. The Jackson Arnold Bowl, if you want to call it that.
Revenge game.
You know, both sides have worked out well with their quarterback situations. Jackson Arnold playing well for Auburn, and obviously John Mateer looking like maybe the Heisman front runner right now for the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, I mean, all is well that ends well, and it looks like all is well for both sides. But this is not just a Jackson Arnold potential revenge game. There's CFP implications on this because if Auburn gets a win at Oklahoma and Oklahoma ends up winning, 8-9 games, it's a chip. Same as the inverse, right?
Yep.
If Oklahoma beats Auburn and Auburn ends up having a successful season by going maybe 8-4 or beating Alabama at the end of the year, you have that as a good bargaining chip, a good resume booster for the college football playoff to be one of the last teams from the SEC going into it.
A lot of teams off this week as a conference play really gets rolling coming up next week in the SEC. We'll come back and hit our final segment, get our keys to the game, as well as talk to Jack Beltry on the scene out in Como as Gamecocks Game Day rolls along here on your Saturday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is Gamecocks game day. Tyler Head and Elijah Campbell out here at O'Hara's in Lexington, wrapping things up here on your Saturday. A quick reminder, our SEC scoreboard was sponsored by our friends over at McDaniels Auto Group, so we appreciate them for always sponsoring our SEC scoreboard each and every Gamecocks game day. We now look ahead to tonight's game. Our guy Jack Beltry on the scene in Como. Jack, what's the lay of the land out there in the other Columbia as these two teams get set to battle for the Mayor's Cup?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back on again. And, yeah, I just pulled up to the stadium. We got a little bit before the gates open for the media, but I see a lot of Mizzou tailgaters out here. I was questioning what the tailgate scene was going to look like, but seeing a lot of tents, seeing a lot of people cooking, and seeing a lot of tiger tails on the back of cars. So feels a little bit like Clemson a little bit, but it's good to be out here. A beautiful day outside.
I didn't know that was a thing, but now I guess I can't forget that now. Obviously, the big news last night, Lenore Sellers coming off of the availability report, so he is good to go today. We kind of felt like that was going to be the case all week long, but obviously you feel a lot better about South Carolina's chances with 16 at the helm today.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a huge deal for South Carolina to have their starting quarterback back tonight, starting on the center. Now, does it change everything in terms of South Carolina? Should it go out and win this game? Not necessarily. You have to play together as a team. The quarterback is just one part of the equation, but definitely getting Lenore's back out there improves your chances of trying to go out here and win tonight. Because without him, I just could not see a way in which Carolina wins this game. But I think there's definitely a chance now that Lenore is out there.
When you look at this offense, too, now that we know Lenoris is out there, the struggles with this offense, well documented. But what do you want to see differently today than what we've seen in the first 3 games so far this season on that side of the ball?
Ooh, that's a good question, Elijah. I think I want to see more of, it's easy to say, let's see South Carolina run the football. Let's see Lenoris go out there and do what he does. I do want to see more of that, obviously. But I think we need to see more in this passing attack. I liked a little bit of what we saw out of South Carolina in that first half against Vanderbilt on some of these early drives where they would try to sit in the pocket and throw the football. And it worked for a little bit of that first half before Sellers got hurt. I want to see more of that rhythm they had in the first half of getting Rasul Faison involved, using Lenore's legs a little bit, but also, like I said, getting that passing attack going, because I think that's how you're going to be able to beat Missouri tonight.
And Elijah and I talked about it earlier defensively. Not a great outing last week where you missed 10 tackles against that Vanderbilt offense. And if you do that same thing today, Missouri is going to run all over you with Ahmad Hardy. So, again, hopefully the film review sessions of practice this week have got this defense back on track because they're going to need it coming up tonight.
Yeah, and the other big thing is that Missouri is missing their starting left tackle tonight, Caden Green. So that's going to be interesting to see if South Carolina can go ahead and take advantage of that with him being out on the injury report. And, yeah, I mean, look, this defense, we know they didn't play great last week, giving up 31 points to Vanderbilt. A lot of that slow-moving, take up a lot of clock type of offense that Vanderbilt had. But I think you're going to see some similarities here with Missouri in the way that they're going to try to run the football down your throat with the running backs they had, led by Ahmad Hardy. And then you also have Bo Perbula, who, again, he's been pretty good through 3 games. I think the thing with this Missouri team that we just don't know yet is we think they're really good, but they've beaten Kansas, Central Arkansas, and Louisiana. I mean, Missouri's handled their business, but they have not played a serious opponent yet. And I'm wondering how they look against South Carolina, because this will be their biggest test so far.
Biggest X factor for South Carolina. Outside of Lenora Sellers, this player needs to be on his A game today for South Carolina to pull this one off.
I think you can go with Dylan Stewart. I think he's an easy choice, and we'll see what Missouri does to try and make him a non-factor. But, I think he is just such a good player to where I think he's got to find a way to break through whatever Missouri does, whether it's a double team, whether it's the offense runs to the other side of the field. He's got to be, an X factor tonight for South Carolina to win this game. It starts with him up front on defense, but it also comes down to him being smart. All right, you don't want to see what happened last week happen again, where he gets frustrated, he takes it out on somebody else, and it leads to a penalty. Play smart football, do what he does, and set the tone in the trenches tonight, because you definitely need him out there and doing his thing.
Jack, when the clock's hit all zeros at the end of this game, what is that final score going to read?
Yeah, my opinion on this game is not really budged too much. I mean, look, Lenore Sellers is going to be out there tonight. it would not shock me if South Carolina wins this game. We've seen what happens before when they get their butts kicked a week prior. Nobody gives them a chance to win the next game, and then they go out here and handle business, and they shock a lot of people. I think we could see that happen. We could see that happen tonight, but honestly, I think I'm going to pick Missouri to still win this game 28-24 over the Gamecocks.
Elijah.
Missouri, 21-17.
Ooh, we're all kind of thinking the same. I got the Gamecocks, unfortunately, falling to the Tigers 28-20. I hope we're wrong, and I hope we all have a fun Monday come Monday, but it's obviously a tough place to play out there in Como. Jack, we appreciate it as always. Enjoy the game tonight. Safe travels back, and we'll see you on Monday.
All right. Thanks, fellas. Take it easy.
This has been Gamecocks Game Day live from O'Hara's out in Lexington. Coming up next is the SEC report that'll take you into network pregame coverage for tonight's game between South Carolina and Missouri. Kickoff at 7, all right here on the Game.